Hi, everyone. Welcome to the podcast. I'm John, your host. And we have a very special new guest, one of which we are hoping to have on a recurring basis, the one and only Mr. Captain Kyle, who's been gracious enough to join us and grace us with his information and insights on things geopolitical and financial. So we'll look forward to seeing what he has to share on that. And if you're new to the podcast, please do like, subscribe, and share, as it helps the channel grow and others to gain in the knowledge you've been afforded. As we always do with first-time guests, I'm going to read his bio verbatim. Captain Kyle, Gen Xer, born in the 1960s, going to high school in the 1980s. He went to college, Lamar University, lived in Hawaii for a few years back in the early 90s. He came back to the Houston area in 93 and went back to school at Houston Marine Academy, where he received his master's and started in captaining ships. He took time out to go to Bible college for a year in the early time of 2001 to 2002, and then summarily retired, changed careers in 2007. He's now currently working for a major oil and gas company. He woke up in the movement around 2003, and he's been sharing his copious information about his journey that we've all been on for the past 17, interesting number, 17 years now. And he has a great team and staff and presence on most social media platforms. And he's focusing on truth and lifting people up and helping people grow spiritually and connect with the Lord, something of which we are very much inclined ourselves. And so as such, we are welcome and honored to have the one and only Captain Kyle. How are you doing today, good sir?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
No, thanks for being here. This is something I've wanted to do for a while, so I'm grateful that we had this opportunity. So, Captain Kyle, we have some very exciting news coming out of Tennessee yesterday, as you know, with Tennessee Rep Tim Burchett calling for public executions for all child pedophiles and predators. What does this signal to you in terms of the stateside movement to reinstitute the death penalty for heinous crimes? And how many more states do you anticipate will get on board with this?
More so than anything, I don't believe it so much as that the state is actually doing something that the other states will fall into. I think this is more of a public service announcement, more so to wake the public up to the actual situation of those specific type crimes and the reality of how they need to be dealt with. So everything has to be introduced, and it has to be introduced in a way that people actually begin to perceive that this is a necessary situation. Why? Because they're not reformable. And if they're not reformable for the acts in which they do, then what is their purpose other than to just suck off and milk society continuously? And we've seen that there is no actually reforming of an individual other than a massive spiritual enlightenment for them to be reformed from that type of lifestyle, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
And so that is, that's a very difficult question. So in all situations, there's always going to be consequences of your actions, all right? Now, there's spiritual reprieve, absolutely, and this is always the case. But in those actions in which you do physically, there always has to be consequences for those actions. And the way that the public would respond is that if you do these things, this is what's going to happen to you. And we showed it to you. So if you go back into the early 1800s, 1900s, they had public executions for that very purpose, so that the people actually saw what actually happened to the individuals that did these kind of crimes, so that you were able to make an informed decision that this was the consequences that you're dealing with potentially.
Yeah, 100%. And as you know, the Lord says in Matthew, better to have a millstone hung around your neck and be thrown into the sea than rather than hurt one of my little ones. And it doesn't mean that, people that have done those things are that God throws them away. There's still, grace and forgiveness. But as you said, there are consequences. And I thought it was a very important step. And also the movement for state sides to go more constitutional, going back to, as you said, to traditional
Yes.
construct of our society. So that's why I was really curious to, kind of, dig in the mud with you and kind of go on a deeper level, which we like to do. As you know, this came out on your post as well in DC. Obama's mansion was consumed by a huge blaze yesterday, and we see President Trump is targeting him more and more with comms about wanting to see people's temperature about seeing arrests in Gitmo, which we know has been happening behind the scenes for quite some time. What does this event tell you in terms of timing for people to see the arrests and seizures of assets of these evil, corrupt deep staters?
It's just that we're on the cusp of it at any time. And it's just really, I think it's more about the pulse of the public than it is anything else, because that's really what they're gauging by each one of these type of situations. And, you know, Space Force has the ability to monitor all comms, chatter, everything. And so depending on the level in which people respond and receive, not only that, but also the human resonance actually reacts to these types of situations when information is released, so on and so forth. And they have been using that and engaging how and when is the right time. And so it could be any time now. I mean, we've been on the doorstep of it, and you can tell by how close we are to specific topics being released and how they're being discussed now publicly, right?
Right.
And
Absolutely.
by public officials specifically, right?
Yeah, going back to our previous question.
That's right.
I'm glad you brought up the Schumann resonance, because I wasn't planning on asking you, but since you rightly brought it up, I haven't been monitoring in a while. Can you give us an appraisal of where we are in the frequency of things?
Yeah, it's been very strong lately, as far as a lot of really influxes of a lot of actual light data coming into the residents of the entire planet. And so this is what's really funny is that so many people, they have no idea what's going on, because they're just, just everyday normal individuals. They have no idea what's going on, but
Right.
they're having a really difficult time. No, I'm not talking about that they don't know that, everything's screwed up and that, but they don't understand what's truly happening by the ascension, and that everything is changing into a much better place. But in doing so, everything has to implode upon itself, so that it's destructed and it destroys and falls basically on its own sword, right? But just
Right.
the average person, they're actually starting to become unplugged into their normal society of going through the motions. And this is something we've dealt with for years and years, of just having to go through the motions of knowing that this is all BS, so to speak, and that I'm just having to continue to go down this road. Well, they're having a hard time because they don't understand why they've lost motivation. They don't understand why they don't feel like it's like they're getting anywhere going to work and getting up and going to work. And it's just, they feel unplugged and trying to associate with their old lifestyle. It's not working anymore, and they're not understanding that it's because they're changing, and all of that is basically a part of the old system of the matrix, keeping everyone enslaved, and they're breaking away from it and don't understand why.
Yeah, no, I think you're spot on with that. And it's a metamorphosis of sorts. In order to go forward, it has to get worse before it gets better, as part of these transitory or transition movements are occurring spiritually, financially, geopolitically, etc. Everything. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like you can't rebuild something until it's torn down, because if you don't, then basically all you do is just cover up the old structure that was already there. That's not actually rebuilding it. It's remodeling it, but it's still the same thing. It's just got a new face on it. Well, that's the same thing. If you put lipstick on a pig, it's still a pig.
I use that all the time. That's funny you said that. And that goes a long way, Captain Kyle, and part and parcel, I think, for people who are not aware, to know that that's why President Trump had to do things a certain way in his first term, and now why, you're seeing him in his second term look and act differently. In his first term, he was what we call King Cyrus, where he was kind of restoring Israel and, setting things up. And then now you're seeing him, which we'll talk about a little later on, bringing prosperity to the nations and really bringing the hammer down. So with that in mind, the Diddy trial, as you know, he's been implicated in a number of deep state scumbags, including Barry Soetoro. His name keeps coming up, no surprise. How many thousands of names do you think will show up on this list over so many industries, from musicians to actors to athletes, politicians, etc.?
I don't think that there's an actual real number. He was turned by the feds years ago, actually, and became an informant, and as in the White Hat informant, because of what he was already caught and trapped in. And so he actually turned state's evidence basically years ago. And so initially when they went after him to go and do the initial arrest, that was the deep state. They were coming in to actually execute him and then to actually get rid of majority of their the information that they potentially had on deep state players. But it didn't work out that way because he wasn't there. Why was he not there? It's because they were protecting him to keep him in a safe place so that he could actually continue doing what he was doing outside of them bringing in that, because when they went into the house, they were loaded for bear. You shouldn't be that way going into just a everyday average individuals. I don't care what you're involved in, unless you're the cartel, you don't need to go into nowhere like that. I mean, just plain and simple, right?
Right.
Well, that was intentional because they were going to use that as that, oh, he fought back and that he ended up, being executed, so to speak. And, dead people don't talk. That's just the way it is.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. With what you're able to share, would it be fair though to say, Captain Kyle, that there have been a lot of people who have already been dealt with in Gitmo previously, and we're seeing a lot of moves and counter moves at this point?
Absolutely. Most of the higher important individuals, so to speak, within a government, within industries, within even corporations, have been dealt with a long time ago. And what's interesting in that is that what you have all of the card players, so to speak, removed and then being played so that a lot of the underlings, because you have a lot of them everywhere, that have to become exposed, but they also have to commit the crimes so that they can be implicated in the actual process. Because this is all a huge RICO case. I mean, it's still having, several 100,000 of sealed indictments still here, where you can have, multitudes of names on each actual indictment is crazy for actually how many people are involved in this specifically. And this is just the indictments that are in federal court here in the United States that we know about.
Wow. Yeah, that's a big ball to unravel. So I'm glad you clarified and said that. Captain Kyle, we recently see James Comey and his infamous 8647 comms pertaining to their agenda to try to assassinate President Trump. Gretchen Whitlas of Michigan was also implicated, as you know. Now, of course, they're trying to walk it back and spin it as if they didn't really mean what they said. How many more blue state politicians and governors do you think will be caught up in this web? And once they're cleaned up, how do we go about replacing them with leaders that actually represent the interests of we the people?
Well, in my own personal opinion, I don't believe he did that because he wanted to. I think he was forced to. And it was intentional to play the hand that needed to be played so that situations could open other doors and other avenues, so to speak, right? The head of the FBI would have never done something like that publicly if they would have been doing it themselves. That's a complete, opening of self-implication that nobody could ever get out of. I mean, nobody could ever get out of that because of what it actually says and means. And I'm talking even to the layperson understands exactly what that means, not somebody that is supposed to be taking down organized crime that uses those kind of phrases and meanings in all kinds of actions, right? Because you do things to symbolize what you're wanting done, right? So people understand that you want to understand that. But I think it was about more so exposing that to the people and exposing potential sleepers that were going to be activated because of that, and they knew it, so that they could be caught in the act of moving in that direction, doing the crime, so to speak, right? And if you didn't do that, which it was going to activate that sleeper cell that was supposed to do these things, well, then they never did the crime. They were supposed to, but they didn't do it. You can't give them the minority report kind of sentencing because you were going to, and you had ideas of, but we didn't do anything about it, right? So you have to actually allow the people under a controlled environment. That's what RICO does all the time, allows people to commit the crimes, document the crime, and then take everybody down at one time.
Gotcha. So would it be fair to say from what you said that Comey is basically playing the role he was told to play in this movie or the narrative?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Cool. Thank you for that. Switching gears just a minute, Captain Kyle, just to balance this out. On the financial side, I'm going to show you some things in a minute, but as you know, it just came out yesterday that the Mississippi governor has eliminated income taxes. Governor Abbott of Texas on Monday just signed a bill to eliminate both property tax and capital gains tax, in addition to other things. How many more states do you think will climb on board this movement? And doesn't it ultimately signal a faster movement to return to sound constitutional monies?
Yes. And that will happen because it's not a federal situation for property taxes. That's a state thing, and it's also a local thing. So we actually voted on that proposition back in the election, whether or not that we wanted to eliminate property taxes back in the election cycle for Donald Trump, and it passed overwhelmingly. But what was interesting about that, actually, for the property taxes here in Texas, is that 77% of the people actually voted for it. It was presented in a way to the people to vote on, that if your property taxes were to be eliminated and there was no increase in any kind of taxation whatsoever, would you want to vote down property taxes, right? Simple. No taxes, no change. We're not going to like put it over here and cause you more money, right? Mm-hmm. And 77% said no. And 23% basically still said yes, that they wanted to keep property taxes. And this was this was like 600,000 people. And it was kind of like, what, how brain dead can an individual be? But then I started to think about it. It's not that they're brain dead. They don't understand that. They think that if you were to eliminate those taxes, well, then how would anything get done? And right. That's the way that they actually present it, is like, how would the roads get built? And how does this? Well, you pay for the roads in your gas tax. You don't pay for them in those. You don't pay for them in these things in which they've been siphoning money and just ripping us off forever. But people are uneducated in their understanding of, we never even needed them.
Exactly. And that, as you know, was done on purpose to deceive the public for quite some time and, be a misdirect. And, to your point, Doge is ferreting that out more and more by the day, as President Trump says, with the waste and fraud. So I'm glad that you kind of
do believe that these examples, mm-hmm. intentionally, it's going to be Florida and all these other places that are even talking about it as well, right? Yeah. That when we go back to actually operating as a republic, the federal government has very, very little involvement in any of the individual states. Each state has its own constitution, its own bylaws, its own everything. And if you don't like your state, go to one that's more condoning to the way that you believe. That's the way it was always supposed to be, right? This, the government itself is supposed to be a military protect, issue currency, which is the end of, all the currency, and for like basic utility services, and for commerce. That's really their only supposedly goals that they're supposed to be, and now they're in everything, right? And that's what they're trying to eliminate. And so as each one of these states go back to its own constitutions and its own form of republic government, which that's what it's supposed to be, mm-hmm. and then representative in the federal, which that's all it's supposed to do, is be representative of the people of that state. And I think that's where we're headed to rather quickly, but it's, to the wings, people that are awake forever, it seems like forever, but to the average person, this is happening at, breakneck speed.
Yeah. Well, it's like you said, those who are informed have a level of core competency that those, like you said, in this voting that you did about property tax do not, and it's that disproportionate have versus have-nots. And what you and I are working to do is try to elevate and expedite the level of speed of which everybody's on the same page, because it just benefits the communities at large. I have a lot of friends in Texas, some in Houston, where you are, Kingwood area and such. It's been widely discussed that Texas is working to become their own country or kind of their own independent entity. What are your thoughts on that?
So Texas has been doing that ever since I've been alive. It's not going to break away from the actual republic itself. It is the Texas was an actual republic, and so because of that, it's a little bit different than any other state in the way that it's actually represented. But as far as breaking away, no, it's not going to break away. It's fully entrenched in the new republic, and there are things that are a part of the treasury here in Texas now. I'm trying to see how I can say this. There'll be multiple locations of our government, so to speak, representative of like the White House in multiple states. Okay, I believe there's going to be 3, maybe 4 different central locations, because DC itself is disbanding. Most of the offices there are empty. They have been for a long time.
Right.
The government itself is moving across the country to where it's more equally balanced across each section, so to speak, like the southern section, west, east, west, because you've got like Florida, Texas, California, and like the northern states, right? So each one of these sections will have its own kind of core representation, which there'll be kind of like a White House in, so to speak, where they can assemble, so to speak.
Gotcha. Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that. I'm glad you brought that up, Captain Kyle, about I had read somewhere, I think the Treasury, it's either, correct me if I'm wrong, it's either in Austin or outside of Austin. Is that the general?
It's not in Austin. It's in a location that I'm not going to say where it's at, but they've been printing the actual new currency there for some time.
Fair enough. I appreciate that. Thank you. That says a lot within itself.
So when you've seen a couple of times over, even in Donald Trump's first term, at the end of it, when he kind of just disappeared, and then all of a sudden he ended up in Texas. Right. That's what he was doing, was actually there.
Good to know. Good point. Thank you for that. Switching real quick, Captain Kyle, the Nasar component of the finances. We saw Elon Musk attend, obviously, the various summits last week in the Middle East alongside President Trump. Saudi Arabia leaders, such as Prince bin Salman, where he was spotted on video talking about UBI and specifically more of our high-level UBI. My question is, was that the unofficial code for Nasar Jasara as an announcement to the world, thereby starting the 120-day clock kickoff of activation, or is it President Trump's sovereign wealth fund discussion that will kick that off?
So I don't know. I think it's going to be more of an actual formal announcement when it actually comes out. And these are all indicators that are saying it could freaking happen at any given time. They're actually just throwing these big old freaking flags up saying, hey, it's here, so to speak, right? Because the UBI in the beginning, and this is why it's being talked about so much with the robotics and the AI technology and us not being able to work the way that we were never designed. We were never supposed to be work slaves. No. And the sovereignty of who we are. And so this is the 4th industrial revolution. And in that revolution is most of us are not going to be working the way that we've worked our entire life. They've got intelligence, and they have robotics that can replace every single aspect of the workforce. And I mean every single one. There's not one that they cannot actually do. And so I was just the other day having an admin meeting, and we were talking, and I was watching the baseball fields, right? And they had two big, like the riding lawnmowers, that were, nobody was on them. They were actually mowing the fields with nobody on them. And I showed them on the admin man. I was like, look, see, they're even mowing the fields. They don't need somebody in here to do it. All they had to do is I had a guy that drove them over there, and he was kind of responsible for all the equipment that was out there, right? And we, that there will come a point where that doesn't even need to happen. I know that the company that I work for, actually over the years, had been investing billions of dollars, and I mean billions of dollars, in transportation that eliminated the human aspect of it completely, where even the trucks and the driving of all these, I'm talking about 18-wheelers, right, that had nobody in them, and they were actually operating to where there was 5 and 6 of them operating together, all communicating as like they were one, as they were like convoys. And each one of them that was in complete contact with each other the entire time is more efficient, more operating on, within that environmental awareness than one person can be driving all by himself. And that they were, at the time, this was years ago, and this is all basically information that's out there, but not really out there. So I can only talk about it so much.
Sure.
That where they were having their limitations is once they actually got to the cities themselves, they would go to a yard, they would have an individual driver come, and then they would actually get in their truck, drive them to their location, so on and so forth. But the national drive across the countries and things of that nature, they didn't need them anymore at all. And this is where they have been heading for years now. And it was just a matter of when society and technology was going to match capabilities for that to actually open up. And right now, with you having Starlink and satellite and the speeds and everything else, because, most internets have been clocked. They've been slowed down, whether people realize it or not. Just your average, LTE is as fast as 5G and faster. They've just got it slowed down. And they've had it this way forever. And so when you have Starlink and the capabilities of that, and that there is no place in which you're basically losing service, now they can actually unleash all of the technology, and that's what they're doing. That's why Tesla just made the announcement, I believe yesterday, that within next month they're going to have, driverless cabs in Austin.
I saw that. Yeah, absolutely. And if anybody who owns a cell phone, which is virtually everyone, you go to the old data plans, and they would tell you, Captain Kyle, right? If you go over your coverage, we're going to throttle down your speeds. They legally have to tell you that. So what you're saying is completely substantiated with that. And as someone who's worked in the corporate world like yourself, no one is ever going to convince me that we were born to stay in cubes, like that movie Office Space. We were not made to be slaves like that. We really weren't. So you're absolutely right.
So I can take it even a step further than that. It's like, so a lot of times where you were thinking a lot of people were, is that when you would have actual jobs that took manual skills, right, so to speak, like construction and plumbing and electrical and all that kind of stuff, technical things as well. Well, now they actually have robotics that actually are as dexterous and coordinated as an individual, along with 20 freaking cameras that can see everything in all directions all at the same time, and process all of that information at one time, and be able to do and perform those things as even as a surgeon, because they're actually doing surgeon work over in China for like orthotics and things of that nature right this minute. No human intervention whatsoever.
Yep.
And so when technology started coming out where they were actually allowing where you would actually be able to have like glasses on where it would have a camera, and you could actually go out into the field, and an operator, somebody that knew what was going on from a different location, could actually walk someone through a very technical process. That individual didn't really need to know nothing, because now the person on the other end of that video feed and the mouthpiece could actually walk somebody through that was just basically technical at all, through the most technically advanced type of job skills. Well, when that started happening, it was like, oh hell, this is already coming, because that's just an advancement of that computer being able to do all of that without having the person actually there by himself.
Yeah, yeah, you can see where they've been headed for a number of years, like you said, which sort of leads Captain Kyle to a question within the question. Do you think that this movement towards AI is for our detriment or to our benefit in the long run?
It's for our benefit. And so, and the reason that I say that is because it's only a tool. All things are just tools. It's who's actually using the tool that makes them good or bad. It doesn't matter what it is. Money inherently is not evil. The love of money is
There you go.
evil.
Thank
Money
you.
is nothing but a tool. And if you use the money in a healthy, prosperous, and beneficial way to society, it is a freaking blessing. There is no evil in it. It's the one wielding it, period.
Exactly.
And we are eliminating those sources of shadows, so to speak, the darkness. And as that is taken out of play, then more of these technologies will come out really quickly, because you cannot release technologies that are even as much as people would like to understand and have med beds come out. They're real.
Oh yeah,
No
well,
ifs,
they are
ands, or
real.
buts about them. I don't want people to,
They
say that,
are.
oh, wait, we've heard blah, blah, whatever. I don't care. But the deal is that technology that creates can also, it's as powerful in the healing as it could be destructive for the entirety of the world. The wrong
Yes.
people would get into the ability to have that kind of technology, could destroy the entirety of the world. That cannot happen. And so until that's been dealt with, which is being done right now and very
Mhm.
quickly,
Mhm.
then as that happens and that threat is now removed, these technologies, which are already created, they don't have to be created and made. They've been being made for years,
Right.
in the preparation of this time in which we're going into. Um, and because of that, you're going to see things changing really, really fast over the next year. And I mean, really fast, because of that very thing. So as the threats are eliminated, out of play, then these technologies are going to come out really quick, and they're going to be presented to the public like breakthroughs. We just had a breakthrough. Now we're doing this, and now we're, no,
Yeah.
it's not the way. But public has to see it that way.
I agree. There's so much to say, Captain Collins. What you just shared, a mouthful, in such a great way. Med beds, as we've shown our audience, I don't know if you know, are absolutely real. We know somebody who is a military person who was at Walter Reed in December 2022. He had stage 4 pancreatic cancer, got in one, 200% increase in red blood T cell count. My audience knows I'm doing for your audience, posterity. So they absolutely are real. But you're right. Everything is God's perfect timing, not our timing. We'd all like it to happen yesterday, but if we've lived on this earth long enough, we realize in retrospect, if things happen when we wanted them to, it could have been for our harm or detriment rather than our good. So it's the overall perspective that the patriots are seeing. You're right. And yeah, whether it's, money, food, sex, the internet, it's all about how it's used and whose hands are at the switch, and making
Mhm.
sure that it's being responsibly governed, right? Like the state self-governing under the constitutional republic. So I'm so glad to hear you say that. So thank you for confirming that. We saw President Trump yesterday, as you know, announce the long anticipated Golden Dome that will invest over 175 billion to create basically a force field shield that will protect against any type of nuclear missile attacks from other countries, in particular countries like China and Israel. Is it wholly designed to protect us for the long-term future as America prospers? Because China has always had intentions to dominate the global market. What are your thoughts on that?
So we actually already have it. And this project is making it public, but also bringing it out into the public arena, so to speak. This kind of technology is like what I was talking about with the med beds, even. It is advanced technology that's thousands of years ahead of where society thinks we are. Mm-hmm. This was also part of the technologies from the sovereigns that were at Mount Hayes that are below ground.
Okay.
That this was the whole purpose, and when Trump went during the inauguration, even brought up Mount Hayes, because it was a signal to the world and to the enemy that we are in complete control, and you will never have this technology. And so that technology is a part of the spider web of technology that basically encompasses the entirety of the world. This was something that Elon Musk and the Doge team was using for access, that there's nothing that can stop it. I mean, absolutely nothing. They do not have any kind of technology that can stop it from getting into whatever it needs to and be able to access it. And so this is how they were finding everything that they were finding, but they had to present it in a way that they were getting access and that they were doing, because they were not going to give them any access to doing the things that they were going to do, because we took all of their financial means away from them to be able to support any kind of resistance whatsoever. We cut them off at the knees by doing that.
Makes sense. So basically, this is a narrative once again for the public to accept the transition, basically.
Yes, because we have anti-gravitics. We've got TR3Bs. We've got over 1,500 of them, okay? 1,500 TRBEs, nothing in conventional space, meaning this planet, could actually stop or control what the capabilities of a TR3B is to another country, period. You can't match it. There's just absolutely nothing you could do, right? Along with energy weapons. So when Trump talks about the technologies that we have, that all those technologies are coming into the Space Force that were a part of the secret Space Force that we had from the deep state's dark projects going back all the way to the 50s and 60s. So this is something that has to be introduced into the public space in a way that makes it look like that they have not had this technology for all these years, because it would be like, if y'all had all this technology for all these years, the revolt of the planet would pretty much just be like, crazy. That it's kind of like when people find out that, and I mean really find out that their loved ones and their spouses and so on and so forth were killed in a war that was orchestrated by the banks intentionally. Yeah. And that COVID was a murder operation to eliminate people, and that you didn't get to see your grandparents actually because they died in the hospital and you couldn't actually even go in and be with them. They had to die alone. This is where it's really difficult, because the amount of potential emotional distress that this can actually cause, I'm talking the truth, when it truly gets out into the main stream of everyone's knowledge, and they actually fully understand how evil the government and the elites were that were controlling and killing, and the things in which people had to suffer and endure because of that, under the lies of whatever, society's going to have a hard time swallowing this. And so we as a people are going to have to go through a process of healing. And in that, that's where I believe that the Nasara and Jasara is very important, because once we get uncoupled from the debt slavery system and that ability to now breathe and not have to worry about bills and finances and how am I going to pay for anything tomorrow, and then have that kind of bombshell put down on people, then it's going to be a lot easier for them to be able to deal with it. And that's why it's so important for those that are awake to be really truly grounded and really truly understanding that you have a very important role as your circle of influence to be the calm in the storm and to help people transition through this. God woke you up for a purpose, not just to wake you up so that you had to deal with all this crap with knowing about it and then not seeing it for so long. No, he gave you this opportunity to strengthen yourself, not only physically, but spiritually, and prepare yourself for the time in which you were going to be actually called.
Man, Captain Kyle, you said a mouthful in that, and there's so many different ways we could take that, but you're absolutely right. I mean, the scale of cognitive dissonance that's going to be in America and throughout the world is going to be outer worldly, for transcendental, for lack of a better word. I mean, people finding out everything you said, including, oh, you mean I didn't have to work 40 hours, 50 hours overtime to be a slave? Oh, you mean I never had to pay property taxes for a property that I could have owned, but I didn't even actually have to register with the state and municipality? And you were just paying that money to a queen in some other country. Oh, I didn't have to have a maritime law lawyer. Oh, I wasn't a bill of lading bill, right?
Yeah.
And all this stuff, and it goes on and on and on. It's going to ravel like a cable knit sweater that just keeps unraveling, like your grandmother would do when she was putting, cobbling a sweater together, right? And those little micro parts extenuate out onto the floor, and that's what we're going to have to go through. So you're absolutely right. It has to be done in a way that has the least amount of collateral damage, which is, I think, is what you're saying. So I'm totally with you on that. Going deeper into the financial, I don't know if you know this, really the mainstay of our channel is we're a faith-based channel, Captain Kyle, that focuses on the global currency reset to help God's giving people like yourself get to the finish line, win, and be, as you said, of service. Be legends in your family, be legends in your community in a bondservant way, that you really use the full weight of the talents of Matthew 25 to God's fullest benefit and for the community. And that's really what we're wholly tasked to do. So we lock arms with you in a respective way that complements that. So with that in mind, the U.S., as you know, has obtained new intelligence that suggests Israel is making preparations to strike Iranian nuclear facilities. Multiple U.S. officials confirm, familiar with the matter, tell CNN. Wouldn't this signal the prophetic word of the late Kim Clement that Israel is going to make their grave mistake leading to the grave surrender that, in essence, Kyle, frees the hand of Iran off of Iraq, their little brother, and thereby begins the global currency reset, beginning with the Iraqi dinar?
So, yes, and maybe not in that exact way, but the premise is there. And the circumstances, because we only see through a glass dimly lit, right? And so we're trying to, even as much as I live in the spirit and have been in 5D and the other things, as even operating in the gifts of the spirit quite often, still, even in that, we're still trying to figure things out, right? And when you know in part, that's all it is. You know in part. And so those parts in which we know, we try to put those pieces together. And sometimes they fit, sometimes they don't, sometimes they're close. But after the fact, that's whenever hindsight always is 2020, right?
Sure.
And it's like the circumstances with Israel is the state of Israel is evil and has always been evil. It was a structure that was put together by the deep state to specifically try to manifest the prophecy of the apocalyptic timeline, period. Okay. And we're not on an apocalyptic timeline anymore. That was taken out of the picture. Now, the old earth is still going to go down that pathway of the apocalyptic timeline, but there are this split, and that is where we are actually splitting onto our timeline, which we've already actually done. And they have continually tried to bring that apocalyptic timeline back into play, but no matter what they do, they can't do it. It's not going to ever happen. Not for the destruction of humanity. Humanity is already separated in that aspect. And the old 3D construct, which will go down that pathway and will destroy itself. That's why there was actually no absolute prophetic or prophecies, I believe, that actually ever went past about 2045, ever.
Mhm.
No one. Because that is the destruction of the old and the prophetic. But this wasn't, even in Looking Glass, where they kept trying to always change it.
Mhm.
It was always coming to 2012. It was always coming to 2012. And they always tried to manipulate that to get that to change. And what they were seeing is their destruction. And the timeline that was presented from that, right? And so they kept on trying to manipulate it. And that was never going to happen, because in 2012, that was when people thought that that was the end. It's not. That's the beginning. That was the beginning of the end of them, actually, in 2020. But that is also when the helpmates that we have here with us now, that actually took down this a spherical or astral net that was a part of keeping this planet encapsulated into the false matrix and the low resonance of this planet. Once that was actually taken down and removed, that was just the beginnings of people starting to wake up. Majority people, not people that had been woke up prior to that. So a lot of people started really waking up in 15, 16, 18, 20, 21. That's when really people started waking up. But in this wake up process, they always knew that just because of the outside influence that was keeping people down, that was only part of it. The actual real breaking away and work that had to be done internally. It had to be done inside. Just like Christ said, the spirit, the I am, dwells inside of you. That is who you need to come in contact with. You need to reconcile peace within yourself and that spirit within you. Nowhere else. Not on the outside, it's on the inside. When you actually go inside and have the peace that passes all understanding, that means is that all of this is being manufactured for the presence of those that are around me, not me, because in my world, this is all beautiful. I'm good. I'm happy. I am at complete peace. Why? Because I already know where we're going. I've already seen where we're going. I've already been where we're going. I'm waiting on people to catch up. And that's the whole thing, is once you actually start getting to that place, then you don't need to see, because you already are. It's about being, not trying to be. And you don't have to look to the world to respond to what you know and get validation from that. This is the problem with the actual public. They need to see it to believe it. And that's not how it works. Is you believe it, then you see it.
There you go.
And you can actually, you can't see the wind, but you see the effects of the wind. You know it's there because of the effects of it. You can see the effects of the spirit, the things that are happening. And then once you actually embody it, then you can actually see it. You don't just see the effects of it. You actually participate in it. And then when you're actually at that journey on waking up and doing the inner work, that's allowing that child, that imagination, and all of those things that were repressed, becoming an adult, saying, you can't, you need this because you can't do that. Well, I'm sorry, but the I am in me does not say I can't anything, period.
Mhm.
And just like Christ said, these works in which I do, you will do greater than I. Why? Because that same spirit that is in me, the I am, not me, the I am, is also in you. And when we start to embody that collectively, that is magnified exponentially in power. And that's what actually started to have the ripple effect on waking other people up by our resonant field of our frequency and vibration spreading outward. And it was, people were positioned pretty much by the way God woke people up all over the place, so that there was no place that was not covered.
Oh, man, that's like perfectly said, Captain Kyle. I mean, you pretty much hit the nail on the proverbial head. And yeah, when you spend time with Abba Father, Yeshua, or Jesus, one and the same, keeping short
It
accounts.
is the same, just like he said.
Yeah.
You see him, you see me, not in the
Right.
flesh, because the flesh is just a
Sure.
bodysuit. But what I do and I say is what he says and what he does, because
Yeah.
you're not going to see either one. You're going to
Right.
see him through me. Just like if you don't see him through me and the things in which I say and do, then that's where there's the disconnect. Christ was a way shower. I am the way, the truth, and the life. Period. And it is not what, it's not about me, it's about what's in me.
Exactly.
And that is him. And he always pointed to him, not himself, ever, ever. And people always want to point to him, but it wasn't him. It was the Father that did everything.
Yep. You're so right. I mean, greater is he that liveth in me than he who dwelleth in the world. I mean, it's all the
It's
same.
correct. And
So
that's what
right.
embodies this movement more so than anything. All this other is just a part of the facilitating show.
Right.
But in reality, it's about a spiritual wake up of humanity so that we can spiritually mature from being babies, because that's what we are, babies. And I mean babies in the spiritual world,
Sure.
and our existence, and coming into our spiritual maturity and going up to a higher level. And in that higher level, yes, our crystalline body, we get our senses back, things that have been repressed away from us, and be able to operate in our gifts as we should be. But the deal is that even at then, we still have to learn how to operate in all that again, okay, in the physical. And we're talking about operating individuals like the Palladians and others that are here helping us that are 7D up to 9th D. And we're talking dimensional, that in the 9th D, they don't even have physical form anymore. They are just spirit completely. And when you go into the 12th dimension and being in the kingdom of heaven, so to speak, I've been there. I've been in the presence of the Spirit of God. And it is more real than me sitting in my freaking truck right now talking to you, than that reality of this. There is more real than this. But you can't enter that realm in the physical form. It is impossible to, but it is more physically real in that state than this is now in this temporal thing in which we call our presence.
Yeah. I mean, again, perfectly said. I mean, like, I'm the vine, you're the branches. So all these topics of, financial, geopolitical, health, saving the children, it's all extenuations of servitude to the bigger picture, right? And so
It is.
You're absolutely right about that. Let me just show you a couple of quick screen video shots. I want to show you, Captain Kyle, and get your take on this. It's on the financial side. Let me know when you can, when you're able to see this. Should be coming up here shortly. Seeing that now?
He gave him a scalding.
Boy, he sure did. But what I wanted, let me just stop this for a second. I want to make sure you can hear the sound, because I know
I was able to hear it when you pushed the play. I was.
Were you? Okay. I just want to make sure. Sometimes it doesn't always go off. But there's a bigger overarching point to these two videos I want to show you. The first one here, President Trump meeting today with Cyril Ramaphosa of South Africa, corrupt as all get out, which is leading to Emerson Mnangagwa in Zimbabwe for the Zimbabweans, corrupt as all get out. My assertion, our team's assertion, so you know where I'm going with this, is that we believe this is a greater part of the exposure, as you said, the wake-up call, to put a spotlight on Africa as a continent and moreover Zimbabwe, as they remove these corrupt, nefarious people, not unlike the rest of the world, you're going to see Zimbabwe, along with all the other 208 some odd countries, thrive. So what I thought was compelling about this is Trump is using a corrupt current person like he did with Carr Starmer and Carney from Canada to do his bidding ostensibly, right? Talking about a reset in the White House. So I'm just going to play this clip and then get your reaction to that.
Also, like to thank you for allowing your people to start discussions with us at the trade level. I mean, we are essentially here to reset the relationship between the United States and South Africa. We are long-standing partners in many ways with collaboration.
So that's one, and then I'm going to play this other one so you can react to both of them. This is yesterday, as you know, Altcoin Daily put this on SEC Chair Paul Atkins, makes a bold message to Congress, and this I'm referring specifically to XRP, now that the SEC has taken their hands off of Ripple XRP. We're just waiting for Judge Torres, the presiding judge, to officially rubber stamp, which we believe is being time for effect. So I'll just play a brief part of this clip for you.
Yeah, because you know as well as I do before playing that,
Sure.
that actual case with XRP got let out of the bag, that it was over a long time ago. And they were like, oh, we got to back this truck up. This ain't the right time. Yeah. Sorry, but we have that proof a long time ago that this was all been strung out intentionally for the specific time. Timing is everything with you. There is so much that has to do with timing. It doesn't matter necessarily the information as it does the timing of information. That is so important.
I couldn't agree more. God's timing is always supreme, and there are things in our life that did or didn't happen because of timing, and we can all go through several examples of that. But just a brief clip from this for both of our audiences, then I'll just get your take on this and what Cyril Rampinosa just said.
Say that it is a new day at the SEC. I'm determined that we return to our core mission that Congress set for us more than 90 years ago. The SEC's three-part mission, as the chairman stated earlier, was enunciated by Congress in the Exchange Act, and that's investor protection, which is vital to our mission, holding accountable those who lie, cheat, and steal. Capital formation is also at the root of what we do, fostering a direct economical route for investors' capital to find its way to entrepreneurs and industry to create products and services. And the third core part of our mission is maintaining fair, orderly, and efficient markets. Congress calls on the Commission to ensure that our regulations balance costs and benefits, that they do not become too burdensome by adding needless friction to the marketplace, thereby undermining the capital formation that yields so much benefit.
Okay, so that's, I think, enough to give you a nutshell on insight there. So what are your thoughts to both of these aforementioned videos?
So the way it's always done, and meaning you push someone or something out into the public space so that the public can actually see what is being exposed on purpose. You can't just tell them, you got to show them. You got to show them the corruption, you got to show them the evil so that that can be dealt with, just like in South Africa with what's going on there. And the crown control that has been basically pillaging Africa forever and causing that kind of corruption to run rampant there from all the countries, basically, right? Because those have all been very resource rich countries that basically live below the poverty line and just ridiculous because of the corruption of the deep state going in, taking all of their resources, their diamonds, so to speak, you know, the blood diamond, everything else, the gold, and those individuals being left with nothing and having to actually, you know, use child labor to go out and actually mine it and everything else, because that is the level of, they don't care. You have been chattel to these people, right? And so this is what's being exposed in this. And then but how they're kind of using it in the way that it kind of got out today, and him presenting it, and I mean, he scalded him in front of everybody with the racism of how they're operating, and how they're actually repressing the white people of their country, in which that was what brought them into leadership, because they were saying the whites were repressing the blacks initially back, years ago. And so it's just been a flip, a complete turnaround. And so this is how they're kind of bringing this out into the forefront so that they can put the spotlight on it to bring it down. And then the other part of that is on the SEC. The SEC basically has one real goal, and that is to make sure that our money is sound and that the money is sound in its investment usage. Well, there have been basically a smokescreen of the Federal Reserve this entire time, because the Federal Reserve and the fiat system is nothing more than a Ponzi scheme and a means to be able to fleece the actual true wealth out of the system as the paper, which is valued at nothing. It's debt versus a debt that is created from nothing, is nothing, like I said, but a Ponzi scheme. Up until the early 1900s, that was illegal everywhere in the world, because of the way that it was designed. They knew it, but this is the situation. And that they have actual complaints, very good complaints actually, on the structure of that with the SEC right now in the Federal Reserve and taking the Federal Reserve down. And so, in my opinion, this is another thing that's being exposed so that they can actually bring that out into the forelight so that the people can see it. I'm talking the average person. That why is my money value? What is inflation? Inflation is nothing more than a fleecing of my freaking buying power intentionally for you to get more money, period. And that right there alone is a means to be able to start showing people that this entire system has been a scam. You've had to work more, you've had to do more, you've had less and less and less, and all of this crazy financial talk saying that people can't understand the way that the financial system works because of these crazy what's the word I'm looking for? Calculations that you have to do for the depreciation and value and all this with inflation and blah, and just the average person can't understand it, is all BS. It's supply and demand. You put more out there that is not, there's less demand of more of same thing, it's going to have less buying power, price is going to go up, you're going to have to spend more. And so the whole thing in the 70s, I saw it growing up, and where before then it was enough that most people had one person working in the family. You had a decent middle class, but you had a car, you had life, you had a decent life. And then through the 70s, it got less, where now mom had to work too, just to kind of help make ends meet. And then we became latchkey kids. So Generation X, we grew up with no parents in the house because of that. But we had already been to the point before that, was we were kind of taking care of ourselves because times were different then, where they actually had to use on the news back in the 70s. Do you know, I'm talking about the evening news, where they come on and say, do you know where your kids are at? Just to remind parents, do you know where your kids are at? Because we were always off doing crazy stuff all over the place. We were surprised we made it through it. And so that was the whole thing, is that everything changed because they started to pay people more. And that was the illusion, that you made more money, but they actually devalued the money at the same time, to where you got that illusion you were making. So all it was a freaking illusion, every bit of it. Okay. So people make more money now than they ever have in the past. And they're more broke than they were when they made a quarter of the freaking money 30 years ago. And that's the illusion of the scam of them fleecing everyone's money. And this is where, once we get back into actual sound money, which is asset-backed money, which is coming very soon, the prices where they say, how will prices kind of go back? Well, that's going to be driven by consumer, period. Okay. So if you're looking at something like, I've got $100 bill right here, and you're going to try to charge me $100 for something that was based upon $100 that was only $97 worth of value. And so really you're talking about $3 in reality, and you're going to charge me that same thing for an actual real $100. You done lost your freaking mind. You better drop them freaking prices, because you got the same dollars I got now. And if not, you're going to go out of business, and so be it. And so immediately the market is going to start to adjust its prices relatively quickly, because they're going to be operating on the same financial monies, right? And they're going to try to keep it higher, but they're going to be pushed down. They're going to be pushed back by people, because people are now not going to, after understanding the scam, they're not going to deal with the scam anymore. And they're going to be the one driving the consumerism versus the other way around. And where I told people when this whole thing started with China, and so everybody was all up in arms and stuff, it's about a trade deal. Nobody's got any trade deals right now, because this was all into the corporate construct. And when you go out of that, nobody has any deals anymore. Well, that deal is that we're going to make it that's beneficial to everybody, period. Everything's been out of balance. It has to come back into balance.
Yep.
But the one that's in power is the one with the money buying, period. Always remember that. Because when you're the one with the money, you don't need something. You're choosing to buy something. The one that has it and that's trying to sell it needs to sell it. And if they don't, they're just stuck with a whole bunch of crap. That's just the way it is, right? And so it's like when you go into a car dealership, they automatically want to make you think that you need them so that they can get that car to you. Well, I got news to you. You're not the only one that's got this vehicle. You're not the only one that's got this truck. I got news for you. I can order one from anywhere. You need me. I don't need you, period. And I'll walk out the door. But they always try to make you feel like that you need them. And most of the time it's because you are in a financial situation and you're trying to get financed, and you don't really have the monies to possibly do it. Because if you did, then basically you go down to your own bank, get financed at the best deal that you can, and then go in saying, hey, I'm already approved for this vehicle, this amount of money, and it's either you want it or you don't want it. And if they say, well, we can't do it, I'm saying, that's cool. I and my money, you're walking out the door right now, and they won't let you out the parking lot. But people don't have that understanding, because they've been put in the other side of that for so long, because people have been so strapped that they're looking for the best opportunity to help them, instead of them being able to helping themselves and be the one making the rules. And the one with the money makes the rules, always has.
Yep.
And so it's like we saw what had started happening to China. All of their manufacturing, all their stuff, they can't pay their bills. They haven't been paying their workers in 6 months, and their country is falling apart completely because of it. And what do we suffer? Nothing. I mean, in reality, nothing. And that's real, because the things in what we were getting from them mostly is crap we really didn't need. We were just buying crap. I mean, Amazon and everything else. I don't get nothing for 2 months. Who cares? But
Yeah.
it caused them to lose everything. Because why? They had to be able to keep up with that supply to keep things going, money. And when that stopped, and when the order stopped, and those people got stuck with all that, it's like it's like all of a sudden, if you're the cartel and you're making all this drugs, right? But all of a sudden you don't have a customer anymore. That's a whole bunch of worthless drugs. That's all it is. If you don't have a customer anymore, period.
Yeah.
And that's really the situation. No matter what the seller is, if the customer decides no, you're the one screwed. Yeah, you're the one in all the power. And people need to start understanding the power in which you operate in, because you're the consumer. Without you, they have nothing. just like your employers, everybody. If they don't have you, they don't have anything. You've been caught up in this hamster wheel, not understanding the control and power that you truly have.
Exactly. I mean, it's always been a disproportionate have versus have nots, which they did on purpose through psyops and brainwashing. It's a balance of power, wholesale shift, and real money, God's money, gold and silver, Haggai 2:8, will govern everything. And when you don't have central banks and fake interest, and banks produce no products or services whatsoever, you go on to some of these banks, and some of these people are complete morons. They don't even know what Basel III is, and they work at the bank. I know more than they do. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, yeah, I do this for a living. But I'm like, shouldn't the person that works at the bank know as much or more than I do? And they don't. They don't have a clue about the reset. We know that that's been done on purpose. The higher ups keep it down. It's the same crap, but you don't have these corrupt banks anymore in charge where it's going to be peer-to-peer banking. If I want to hire you for consulting or, marine, ship manufacturing, or I want to buy a yacht or something, and I want to say, hey, Captain Kyle, what's the best boat for me? I can do it peer-to-peer, which basically they've already set up the construct, right? They've got Zelle and Venmo and PayPal. You just remove those schmucks, and it's just you and me direct going through the new.
And there's smart contracts and everything else that goes with this, that it eliminates all of the bureaucracy and the BS that have basically created differences and difficulties in transactions intentionally.
The middleman, and you can eliminate useless landlords who have been just overlords, basically glorified overlords. And you're right. I mean, those who control the money make the rules. So if you're putting in the hands of the right people to govern the interests of the people instead of against the people, then you have a societal construct that's actually in a winning position, which is what you and I are working towards helping people to see. So with that being said, last question for today, because I know you've been very patient. I appreciate that. And thank you for all the information. It was recently reported, I'm sure you saw, that Argentina has recently discovered and reported some of the world's largest silver and gold mining reserves in the world. That's single-handedly going to change the fortunes and the economic landscape of not only Argentina, but that of the world for that matter, especially given that President Trump has already established a zero reciprocal trade agreement with Javier Milei in Argentina months before any of these trade deals, optically, time-wise, started to come to fruition. How significant do you think that discovery is going to be in the long run?
It's pretty, well, let me put it like this. Do you think they just actually discovered it? No. None of this has just been discovered.
No.
It's just like they didn't just discover what was underneath the pyramids. They've known about this for a long time, but it's how it's being presented to the public, right? But it also changes the landscape of who's actually in control, and that this information is coming out when it's coming out. And there's more than enough for the stabilization of those markets around the world, whether it be gold and silver, because I know for a fact that one of the most used elements in the new technologies is actual silver. And silver itself on the COMEX is way over what they have. I mean, way over, right? And so for that to come back around and to be able to give balance back to what those needs are going to be in the long run, it's still going to exponentially bring the price up because of the demand still in the new technologies. So silver is really in the real, what's going to be the hugest gain in whether it be gold and silver, right? Overall, from how much it actually jumps, just because of its actual consumption of what its purpose is, right? But the stabilizer that will stabilize the finances around the world, that won't be manipulated anymore, will be the balance of gold itself, right? And so with that, and with those finds, so to speak, it just brings the stability to the market around the world, that we've got more than enough and the adequate supply to do those things in which we need to do moving forward. And average people that don't need to worry, well, is there enough to cover all of this, right? Oh, absolutely. There's so much that you don't really realize, that even in the United States, we have all of those rare earth metals that are in actual mines right now that they've actually shut down a long time ago and wouldn't let them access it. And those are all on a endowment of trust that is owned by the government. And they were never intentionally going to let that out because they didn't want the United States to be that self-sufficient specifically.
Right.
But we have all those rare earth metals in Arizona, Nevada, and the Southwest. Southwest. And I think there's another one that's really huge too. It's up around, it's like on the border of Canada and United States. I can't remember exactly where, but it's crazy the amount of what we got. And nobody knows it because it's all on federal land,
Right.
and nobody can get it because they won't let nobody touch it. It's kind of like in Anwar about the amount of oil reserves that we've had up there that they've never allowed us to get to because they always wanted to keep us dependent and under struggle and not ever be completely independent ever. Because if you have an independent country, independent society like that, and very wealthy and well-to-do, it's really hard to control them from a global standpoint because they were wanting to move into the new world order, global kind of economics, right? And if you have something that you can separate yourself as independent energy and independent this, independent that, you don't need that. It makes you not want to be a player within the world kind of, direction on what you're thinking that, allowing, other countries to dictate kind of your policy. You can basically give them the finger if you don't need that. So they've always kept that away from us. But then also how they have taken with NAFTA and everything else that they did, intentionally took the manufacturing out of the country so that it caused us to independently become dependent on these other countries, mostly China, because that's where they wanted the manufacturing to be done through, and then control us through the CCP.
Correct. And, it's again, and what we talk about with our audience all the time, because you don't know, you will now. It's an attitudinal mindset. It's from lack to abundance, faith to fear, which you've touched on. And
yes.
And most are not even aware they're going to find out that the Grand Canyon has a plethora of what's called plaster gold sitting in those mines. I always saw security guards when I go, I'm like, what are you guys guarding? Oh, nothing. I'm like, right. If it wasn't anything, why would you be here? And all you have to do is ask your average schmuck banker, if gold and silver ain't worth anything, why do you guys want it so badly? They never tell you that part. It's not what people tell you. It's what they don't tell you. And that's what, we're here to uncover. So really love this conversation, Captain Kyle. I've enjoyed it immensely. I hope you and our audience has as well. As we round the bend and close up, where can people find your work, and last thoughts you have for the audience today?
You can find me on my Telegram channel. If it doesn't have, there's a lot of imposters. So if you find me on my Telegram channel, it's got 115,000 people on it or so, maybe just under that. And then I'm on Twitter. I think I've got 60 plus, maybe 70,000 on there. I don't know, really. And then I've got Rumble channel. It's got a lot too. So anything that you're going to find, 3,000, 4,000 or less, that's some scammer, that's some group. Don't fall for it. They're trying to befriend you and rip you off. And very, very soon, these individuals thinking they're going to get away with it are going to have a really, really bad day when somebody shows up at their house and says, hello.
Yeah. We want to have a few words with you.
It's not going to be good. So I just saw the other day, FSB, the Secret Service of Russia, right, was raiding some facilities that have been doing this very thing on a mass scale in Russia, and they came in and took them all down. I mean, it was like, like you see in the Wolf of Wall Street, where they came in, it's like the whole floor is all like the Wall Street dudes. Well, it's kind of like that, but these are all scammers, and they came in just guns a-blazing. All these agents did that were part of the secret police for Russia, and they took them all down. I mean, every single one of them. So this is happening around the world. You may not see it, but it is. And in my opinion, this is only my opinion, but I think those people that have been ripped off will be reimbursed. And how they're reimbursed is, I think, through seized assets.
Well, I can answer that actually and contribute for that for you. Also, like the movie Boiler Room, where they went in at the end, they're fraudulently trying to impersonate J.P. Morgan and rip people off on the stock market. Same notion you're talking about concept. If you go to the OFAC list, Office of Foreign Assets Control, it's the Treasury legal cops, and there's almost 2,000 pages. My Telegram, I can send it to you, of all the arrests and seizures of assets in alphabetical order from every country. So it will be coming back. But people think, oh, nothing's happening. No, you just don't know about it yet. You will. It's all being sent back. And I got to ask you one more quick question before we close. I just realized I'll get crucified if I don't ask you this. So there's a lot of talk about the EAS or the EBS. Do you see that happening? And do you have a sense of when that will occur?
I do. It's got to be something that it's only going to be for global. That's just the way it is, because that's the way it's been presented, not local. Now, there's been a lot of local ones, right, because of different things. But we're talking about the actual EAS, Mars system, so to speak, where it's actually the military putting this out, right? That has got to be something that gives the public directions in that state of chaos or potential chaos that affects the world potentially globally. And so, and until that happens, we have not hit the precipice, people. Just plain and simple. Everything is look over here and not over here, because all of this is a smokescreen, because the crash is imminent of everything, and it's got to happen. Because you've got to eliminate that old, just like I said in the beginning, it's lipstick on a pig, still a pig. The pig has to be taken out of the picture. And that's with the financial system, that's with the governments, that's with everything. And until that actually happens, then we're just coming to that point of what's going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back. What's the news? What's the circumstance that actually is the trigger that causes all the dominoes to fall? Because everything has been falsely propped up for a long time.
Yeah.
And what we don't know, and this is all by design, on purpose, because if we, even in the spiritual, don't, God will tell me, he's like, you got to experience it, son, on purpose. It's like, even in that circumstance, the reason being is that can't get out. It can't change. Everything has to happen organically. And as it does, it will actually manifest exactly the way it's supposed to. Not controlled and not manipulated, organically, the way God intended it to happen. And it will. And so we're coming. It could do, man, it's like always, it's like, I want it to happen right now and before I get out of the truck. But will it? Probably not. But, it could happen at any given time, because we don't know. We're getting closer and closer to all of the flags, so to speak, showing that it could happen at any given time, just like the arrests and everything else, because you don't know how one trigger is going to happen, another trigger that's going to happen, another trigger. And when the information starts showing, God did show me this a long time ago, that it's kind of like this huge dam, and I actually prophesied this over about 5,000 people back in early 2000, that God's Spirit's being held up by like a dam, and all of the dam itself has got cracks in it, and little bitty spigots are coming out all over, and that's where his Spirit's actually waking people up. Things are happening, but there's going to come a time that dam itself is going to give way, and when it does, it's a consuming flood over everything, and not a destructive one that is actually designed to bring enlightenment to all, and no one can reject it, because it's not where they can actually say, I'm not sure. No, there's no way, you can't know this is God. It's like even the rocks will cry out.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is where we're at.
No, I have full agreement. Once again, I don't mean to put you on the spot, and that isn't my intention, but do you have a sense it'll be the share?
Yes. I
Okay.
don't know when,
Right.
but I do think it's this year. And I think that just to affirm even more that once that actually happens, then within 6 months to a year, full contact was going to happen. So sometime next year to the very first part of 27, we're going to have open contact.
Wow. I know
Of our
exactly.
history and of our brotherhood.
Yeah, the portals will open up, in other words.
Eh, those things in which are hidden will become
Be
visible,
revealed. Mm-hmm.
will be revealed. And so it's already starting as far as that reveal.
Yeah.
Only certain places to prepare the way, but openly for all next year to the latter part of next year. So sometime 26, early 27, reality is going to be completely different, because when that happens, all of history will change.
Yeah.
Because the revealing of our past and all that is got to be corrected in that very thing. Just the way it is.
Couldn't agree more. Well, we will definitely leave your links in the description, of course, so that people can contact you and get involved. And folks, for Captain Kyle's side who are watching, if you are looking for currencies or adding to the cash over you have, we have a great sponsor for the channel for that, for Dinar, Dong, Zim bonds, I'm trying to think, Thai baht, Venezuelan Bolivar, and all the other countries. We have a great supplier of uncirculated currency where you don't have to give your entire life of information just to get it. And we will leave that link for you in the description. Captain Kyle, thank you for joining us. It was an immense pleasure. Hope you'll come back on again soon. We look forward to having you on again, and have a great rest of your day.
You too, and it was my pleasure. Thank you.
God bless.